Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to our art class for kids and for beginners for now. And of course, my hope is that eventually we'll get beyond the beginning stage and we can go on to more in-depth teachings and go on from graphite as well and get into color, colored pencils, pastels, oil pastels, watercolor, acrylic, oil painting. So I desire to cover it all eventually. And right now we're here with Enoch again. So praise God. It's a blessing to have him here. And we have another still life today, and this is our focus. Our focus, as in the last class, was on an egg. And the purpose in this is to begin to learn how to observe, especially from life. That's what's important as you begin, because you need to train your eyes how to see, how to observe shadows, how to observe your highlights, where your light source is hitting and coming from, and where it's creating deeper, darker shadows inside. I know you guys can't see this, but maybe we can give you a view of this at some point. But Enoch is going to be learning how to draw the shadows, how to create a sense of depth, and how to create a sense of mass. You know, like the apple, it weighs something, and so we want to be able to convey that to the viewer, right? So it's one thing even to draw a banana, to draw an apple, and even to shade it, to have light and dark and all of your in-between value. But then it's another thing to give it a sense of weight, of volume. So all of that needs to work together, and this is why I have it on this cloth again, just to give us a good surface to work with, to create texture, and to give us some interest on how the shadow is falling upon the cloth, etc. So we're going to begin, and basically I'm going to observe Enoch while he draws, and he's going to ask questions if he has questions. And I have this little moleskin sketch pad. I'm just going to sketch a little bit today while he draws as well. I'm just going to use a mechanical pencil. It's got 4B lead in it, and I'm going to use this. And he's got his range of pencils as well. So, you ready? Okay, let's begin. Earlier we were talking, I could just say this while Enoch begins. We were talking about composition, and you know, he had liked maybe the banana to be kind of over here, wondering if he should draw just the banana and just the apple. And this is going to be a much more difficult composition to work with on a single piece of paper. And so, but if we bring them together, we get more interest, and we can work with how it fits on the piece of paper in a way that's pleasing to the eye. And we can get into all of that, the law of thirds and all of those kind of things concerning composition in later episodes, later classes. And so for now, we brought them closer, and you've got overlapping, this shadow kind of coming right up into the apple there. It just brings a little bit more interest to the composition. So let's see how he does.
Let's start with the banana or apple first.
Well, it's really up to you where you want to begin. What I would do is I would get my general shape of this apple, and then I would begin to bring in the general shape of that banana. And do it lightly with maybe, you've got your 6B there, so draw it lightly, do a quick sketch just to get your shapes here. We can get into, again, different things later using lines on how to get your shapes more perfectly. But right now we're just learning how to observe.
Do I draw a cloth right here in the way of the apple?
If the cloth is in the way of the apple,
With the bottom of it.
then yeah, you should go ahead and draw the cloth. Give the sense that it's there. And it's neat because what you can do, and you'll notice how this shadow comes right across the top edge of that cloth. You see that? And these little, attention to these little details is really gonna cause you to create a sense of space and volume as you learn how to apply it. Because remember, one of the purposes of this is to learn how not to draw what we think is in our mind, but what is actually in front of us. And this is what's going to create the greater sense of illusion. And, in the beginning, you don't need to worry about a ton of detail. You can, but right now, again, we're focusing on observing light and shadow, observing how to create mass and give a sense that, for example, these two pieces of fruit are actually sitting on the table. So for me, Enoch is starting off a little dark. Like, I would draw much lighter if I was going to do that. So why don't you try to do it a little bit lighter, because it's nice when you start as light as you can, because that way you can erase more easily in the beginning. So why don't you try to go a little bit lighter, a little bit softer as you get your shape. And the reason is given the nature of the drawing that we're doing, observing shadow and light, we're not doing a line drawing. So if I was going to do a line drawing, my lines would be much more distinct. If I was going to try to create a sense of depth or mass with just lines, then I would want much more distinct lines, right? I'm not going to be shading. I'm not going to be doing any of that per se, depending on the line drawing I'm doing. But that's going to require much more distinct lines. But if I'm trying to get kind of not really have many visible lines in the drawing, then I want to have a light outline at first, so that I can essentially in the end not have it appear in the drawing. So I'll start a little bit observing from my end with the apple and the banana. So I'm going to come in very light as well. Again, I've got a 4B pencil in here, and so I'm just going to try to get the general shape of my apple. I don't personally draw a whole lot of still lifes these days, but I really like to do it when I can. And anytime I can observe from life, it's always going to sharpen our eyes. It's going to sharpen how that translates into everything else that we do. We'll also learn how to paint from life and all of these things as we go. And practice, as they say, really makes perfect. It really helps to hone our muscle memory. So much of art is based upon muscle memory, right? So our muscles, as many of you know, have memory. And just like you go work out, you exercise, your muscles create a memory. And it's the same thing when you're drawing. You are creating a memory in your, you need the brush? In the muscles in your hand and arms, and so the more you do it, the better you will become by virtue of exercise, right? And so one thing I can do if I really want to work on my shapes is I can see like where the apple meets this cloth, right? So like a lot of times I'll use a pencil and I'll hold my pencil like right, for example, right here at the base of that stem, and I'll hold this angle, okay, right where the apple meets the cloth, and then I'll come here and I'll translate that, okay? And so I can see that this point, generally speaking, is where I want to begin to bring my apple back around here, yeah? And so that's a good way to learn perspective, to get your the size, the shape, whatever it is you're drawing. You can use this technique in life drawings of people or animals or anything like that. I use it all the time in everything that I draw or paint, and I'm doing it often so that I can get my proportions correctly. And you see how much bigger I really needed to go than my initial observation. See, it was way off, right? But the more that I observe, the more that I look, and so I can see here that the apple and the cloth make kind of a point here. And so I can take this line from the bottom of that to this. I can do that again. And so I can observe this line here, and I can bring it down. And I can see right where that point is going to come. So I'm looking like right here, and then I'm going to begin to go up again, because this is where I measured my line, right? So this is just it's a good way to make references as you go. Were you understanding what I was doing? So your apple's looking pretty good. But as you can see, like your top line here, you see if you do this and you look there, you can get a sense of how that line is supposed to go. You see that? Mm-hmm. Right? Does that make sense? So I do that a lot. So you can use the pencil you're drawing with, or you can use another pencil, and you just, you want to get if you want it to look like this apple, and not just like any apple, but this apple, that's what we're going to do. Yeah, you got to keep it steady though. You got to keep the same angle and bring it down. So the banana, which I have a little bitty piece of paper here. So I'm probably not going to have all the room I would like for my apple and banana, especially with the size of my apple. But that's okay for me for now. I'm just going to come here and, it's coming across just right almost in the middle of that apple. Again, this is one of my darker points in this still life here, is where this apple is meeting the cloth, right? So, and again, I'm just working with one grade of pencil, just the 4B. Enoch's gonna be working with the whole range. And so what I do is I'm really practicing pressure, right? So I'm just lightly using this, or applying a lot of pressure to get more of the darks that I want. And depending on the amount of contrast I desire in this paint, in this drawing, you know, I may exaggerate a little bit on certain areas if it needs more balance, more contrast. So then over here as well, where the banana meets the apple, there's some nice darks as well. So we've got some nice dark lines working here. And sometimes, you know, I really like details, and so I can get distracted personally with details. So something to observe, right? As I'm creating this curve for the banana, as it's like coming at me, I can be tempted to want to make the curve come out longer than is actually the reality, right? So if I take this and I see like this curve hits a break right here where the banana has a part where it comes up, right? And so that curve is in line with the apple here. Okay, so I need to be able to observe that where the bend in that apple makes a sudden shift. And it's not so sudden, but it's subtle but sudden. And so I want to take that and I want to bring it over here. And so I can see that, you know, my curve is going to be too far down on the apple, right? So if I come back, just observe it again. So I'm really wanting this break to be about right there, yeah? So I can come like this, and then I can see that this banana makes a curve the other way right here. And it doesn't actually go very far past the apple. In fact, it's almost dead even with the bottom of the apple where this curve ends, right? So we're going to do that. And then we've got the point here of the banana. So I was able to actually fit in more of the banana than I expected. And this is important when we learn perspective. And so, because we can really, our eyes can fool us. So we need to learn to know what is the reality of the plane that we're working on, right? Because this point right here can really feel like very much further than the apple, but on the plane that we're drawing on, it's really not. So the very like point of this banana from my perspective is it's just almost right at the base of that apple. And so I have to be careful, right, to not overextend what I'm doing, right? So I've got this, you know, and then to get the outside of it, to get where that tip is, you know, it's going to be almost lined up with this, you know, with this crease here that we made. And so I can figure that if I come down here and I come down there, that I'm going to get my point, you know, somewhere in here, somewhere in this area, so that I can rightly draw the perspective that I'm looking at. Yeah? So here's the tip of my banana is there. So I've overextended in some ways just a little bit, but that's okay. It's not going to be a great loss, but I'm going to adjust my little banana stem so that it comes up more like that, yeah? And then we come in and we've got another curve here. Yeah. So I'm almost, I mean, it seems like I'm almost going to be able to fit a good part of my banana. Maybe the whole thing in this little drawing here. And so we've got some texture, you know, and this is really nice texture in here of the banana. And this is a darker area, so I'm just going to kind of take some time to kind of put in some shadow there and get this little piece of this banana where I want it. And then, you know, once you start getting your perspective right, things begin to kind of fall in place. So I want to follow this line down through this, right? But I don't need to actually draw it there, but I just need to kind of carry it through, and I begin to get a good sense of where I'm going. All right, but I don't want to like jump too far ahead of myself. The banana itself kind of carries up a little, but then I've got this plane down here of the banana. And I went a little shallow there, so that we're going to come up to there. And this is on basically a similar line. So then here we go. We're going to bring that back up. We've got as well another line here. Comes all the way over there. And we're going to carry this back. So this is a little, I think a little further out here, yeah? So let's see. So I want to look at that line there on the outside of that banana, bring it in. And yeah, it's more like my second line here. That's a little nicer. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, just erase a little bit. Alright, so we're making a little bit of progress. But again, everything is just learning how to observe. And as I've done my banana, I still feel like my apple's a little small personally. Like I feel like it's got a little bit better eyes on this. Now, if I really care, I may just add a little bit. I generally may not care that much, but let's just add a little bit to this apple. And I think that'll be nice there. Yeah. And then I'm actually gonna add a little bit there to the stem, just a little bit to the stem, not much. Make that one a little bit darker in there. So one thing I've noticed, one thing that can help is like, where does this, part of the apple fall in line with the banana, right? So this is something else I could do. Kind of see where that falls. So it runs right in between these 2 points on the banana, so I can make sure to get that right in the middle. And really it's sitting kind of right where it needs to be, generally speaking. And then, so for me, I'm just going to take some time. I'm just going to shade here. I'm going to create some vertical lines like this, okay? And, it's nice because this is the plane, right, of this banana. So and a lot of the darker lines, a lot of the kind of the scarring, as it were, on the banana, it's all going vertical. So these are nice, these are going to be nice vertical lines that will actually help me give a sense of it being a plane right? And then, we've got coming lightly here. There's very light shadow under here. It's not a heavy shadow. You've got a little bit of shadow in here. It's a little darker maybe. But again, all of this is in shadow. And so I'm just doing some very light work here. I may bring some somewhat horizontal lines and begin to smooth things in a little bit there. Yeah? And we've got some dark, where the banana is kind of maybe looking a little bit older. Some dark, how bananas get that sense it's not rotting, but some dark spots on it. And it's not necessarily shadow, but it creates some nice texture and it creates nice contrast as well. So there's a lot of subtleties, when you're drawing and painting fruit. There's a lot of subtleties in the texture and all of the things that are going to give you a sense of mass, depth, volume, etc. So this is that point I was talking about where the banana kind of comes up and takes a curve there. And so we want to try to emphasize that a little bit. So, it's got certainly darker where it hits the cloth, where it hits the table. Yeah? How's it going over there, Enoch?
Okay.
Going okay? Look at that, huh? That's looking nice. Are you using the techniques I'm talking about? So, you see how far down this is? Is that how far down it is when you look at it? So if I take this here, right, where does that line up? Now this is for my eyeball, so you'll have to use your own pencil for your own eyeball. But this here is lining up, look at that, right at the bottom of the pencil. Look where it is. It's like right at that place, right? So where is yours? So if I take yours, where is yours at? It's low, right? It's a little too low. So it's just, that's a good way to observe. If you're on the right plane that you're actually observing, right? So this banana it's a little flat. It's going down a little too much.
I think it's a little skinny too.
It's a little skinny too, that's okay. But again, so these are all the ways that we're going to observe. So this also, remember that this area here is this is going to be your darkest plane, right? Because this plane is essentially receiving the least amount of light, right? So this point here, this should not be darker than this. At the least, it should be the same, right? I'm not saying there can't be a dark point here, but this in there is all going to be your darkest place, right? And you're gonna, and it does have a value, right? Because the banana it's not perfectly flat, so there's like a roundness to it. And so you're gonna want to darken all of this as well. I'm not saying you were done, I'm just telling you based on where you're at right now. So that's gonna, you're gonna want to darken all of that up. And I wouldn't worry too much about overcorrecting right now. You're just learning, you're getting it figured out, but this is something to observe for future reference. And I could always take a moment to use this guy here, the shading stump, if I wanted, and I can begin to kind of start with my darks, because my darks are always going to get a little lighter with the shading stump. So I'm going to have to go back, revisit my darks, but I can begin to at least smooth out my strokes. If I want to take this the easy way. I wouldn't normally do this, generally speaking. I just don't use this very much. But again, I just want to show you guys how quickly this can change things as well. And so then after that, you know, I'll play with it. I'll try to develop from there. Yeah. And I say you don't need to pay attention to details. I may put details just to play around with it. Sometimes the details on these bananas are kind of neat. You know, and it can give some character. And really, you know, the top of the banana it's very smooth, and you know, it's got some nice scarring in here. Again, depending on how serious I want to take my drawing, you know, I can measure these scars and where they are at as far as, you know, this point here goes, you know, so that this, you know, so I don't overextend even that line, you know, maybe it's just here. And you know, the neat thing about some of these scars is it can help you get a sense of the volume of your banana as well, because it's going along the surface, right? And so here we're just creating some of the discoloration on the banana. And yeah. And so something to observe is this line right here that I made. It's very sharp and it's dark. So if I was going to take this serious, this is what I'm going to do, okay? If I had a good range, I would use more of these pencils, but from here, I only have my mechanical pencil and I have this guy. So what I would do personally is I would lighten this up, okay? Because there's no real line, you know, there per se, but what is there is a shadow that's very, very subtle, right? So maybe I come in real light. See, that's a very light shadow, okay? And so maybe I want to draw some of this out. And begin to just kind of make my line go away, right? Because I don't really want too much lines. I mean, sometimes lines are neat, you know, and it gives some character and style to your work. Depends on what you're going with, right? So these real subtle shifts, this is really nice to have if you're not, you know, depending on if you really want to work with everything that you have. So these are very nice. And then here it takes another shift, right? So that you know, you've got you really have a plane here, and you've got another plane on top, right? It's a little bit darker, right? So this area here, it's lighter than this area here, and because it shifts back down. So I will actually probably go back in, try to erase some, and get a better sense of things. So, like, I feel like this is a little too dark there. No, I don't like that line so much there either. So anyways, I'm just gonna bounce around a little bit here. So even the stem has different, planes on it. So here's a plane here, and we'll, try to give that a little character. It gets a little bit darker right in here. Yeah. It's a little bit darker in there, so let's add a little bit of contrast. I'll go back, I'll try to use this thing. How's it going? You have any questions?
I feel like mine is not so fine as yours.
Not what?
So fine as yours.
Well,
I don't know.
you're here to learn, right?
Yeah.
But it's good. So you erased all of your shadows. It looks like you kind of got a little too concerned with the perspective. What I would do is I would make this part a little bit bigger, okay? Don't be afraid to make it a little bit bigger. Like, this guy here. That, yeah. It's looking good. And I would just put back in your darks and lights.
I erased because I thought it looked too messy.
Remember, this is a line down there. See that? Yeah, so you're gonna have a line here. Yeah. Yeah, but it looks good. I think let's focus on observing the shadow, highlights, etc. now, practicing your values. And maybe add this little line here.
Make the banana a little thick as well.
Well, again,
What is that?
don't make it the way you think it looks. You gotta make it the way it actually looks. So, if I'm looking from your perspective, this stem needs a stem, right? So like you see how there's a line here, it comes like that. You see that? See this line? That's a very important line to give you a sense of depth. Yeah? There you go. Now that line is subtle, right? Because right here, it breaks and it comes up a little bit. So you have to be careful not to just make your own. So I'm gonna come back in and do some shadows. Here, yeah. Make this a little darker. Yeah. That shadow kind of comes all the way up for me here. Yeah. Try to make it a little darker in this area. Okay, and so then all of this, and this shadow doesn't come out until it starts coming out like right in here for me, yeah? That's what I can tell. So all of this, it's really in a lot of shadow. So what I want to do is I kind of want to turn it, because I've got a lot of these lines of that coming like from the sheets are kind of coming this way. So what I think is going to make it really nice is if my lines are really coming this way, right? That's going to be nice, because that's the way that the fabric in many ways is coming. And so I can just kind of begin to fill in with my brush strokes coming this way. And it's subtle. You know, when you're done, it'll be subtle. But like right now, maybe it doesn't look so subtle. But it will be when I'm done. I have another line as well that kind of comes right up into the apple, almost into the apple. And it comes like this. It comes right underneath my banana. Okay, so it does this. And it's really neat because right there, the shadow breaks over this material, right? So that's a really, really nice shadow, and it's going to bring some interest to my composition. So I'm going to come up here, I'll bring this up, and what I also have is I've got shadow coming all the way up to this material, and there's just going to be a highlight right there, and that's going to really add a lot of interest to this drawing because it's going to bring my eye right into that apple. And so I really need to make my apple interesting if I'm going to bring so much attention to the apple. So here there's more lines drawing into the apple from the banana, and we can observe, right? Now there's a lot of neat, it's some good texture. So I'm probably not going to really like use my shading stump in this area because I really want to keep some of this nice texture, right? But I am going to try to follow a little bit of the curvature of the banana, as I can observe that a bit in some of these wrinkles. And it gets a little bit darker in here though, so I need to be careful to observe how dark I go though, because I want enough contrast, but I don't want to lose all of my nice subtle shadow lines either that are in there, right? How's it going? Oh yeah, you're looking good. You're making some ground. Okay, so another thing to observe is here, this area is another plane, another line, right? So you've got this line coming in, right? And it comes in and it meets your stem right there. So you want to, you're going to have to observe that, right? All right. So what you have here, let me see, is, so that's going to come in really like you don't have, there you go. That's right. There you go. That's looking nice. And you may want to bring, you got this outside line too dark. Like I would not have gone so dark on that far line, because really you're going to have to adjust it a little bit. But it's looking nice. That's good. So where you're going to want to work on, Enoch, on your banana especially, I mean, of course we're going to work on observational, distance and depth, etc. How to like translate that better. So that's something we'll need to work on. And then your highlights and your shadows, you've lost your highlights with the banana. And it's going to be hard to get them back because you've erased so much. So that's something you want to be careful with, is if you over erase, you will lose your highlights. And that's fine. You know, sometimes you just have to go a little bit darker to find your highlights again, as it were. So he could recover some of this if he just, starts putting in some more of his darks. Don't get carried away. You want to put in what you see, right? So this does not go all the way to the edge, right? There's a highlight that actually runs the whole length of your banana. Yeah, so you want to be careful with that. We've observed a few things. Here's a shot. I don't know if you can get that or not, but this is a bit of my banana here, kind of taking some ground on the banana. Here's my apple. It's not at all finished. It's just got my outline. But you get the idea. You see where we're going. Maybe we'll finish this up and maybe we'll show you the end product on our next class. But for now, I think we're going to come to a close. I think this is good practice, and Enoch's learning a few things. And again, most of what I want Enoch to learn right now is basic observation. Yeah? So just one more thing. So I've got a shadow that's coming out from behind my apple, right? And I can tell that my banana here comes through my apple like that, right? And there's a shadow on the back end of my apple as well. So right here, I need to bring what I thought my shadow was going to be here. But based on my lines, I need to bring my shadow down to about here, okay? And so, again, we're working with perspective. We're working with planes, like the table is a plane. And so we want to adjust everything according to the plane that we are working on. And this is just part of basic observation and translation to the paper. I can't actually see the back of my banana. Enoch can see the back of the banana from his place. But that's really neat because he can really add some nice depth to his. I can add the shadow of my banana, but I can't actually add the banana. Banana's just not that long. And so this is where the shadow of my banana is basically going to lie over there, right? So then the shadow of my apple is coming all the way out here and off the page. Again, the apple has a really nice, right here, this sheet makes a really nice, important shadow here to give some good depth and sense of composition as well. Again, I'm probably going to want some vertical lines, bring in more texture, etc., right? So there we go. And I think that's about it for the day. And this is a good lesson for the day. Maybe I'll finish that apple at some point. Thanks again, you guys, for joining us, and we hope that you will join us again. And hopefully at some point you can send in your drawings. We'd like to see them, how the kids are progressing, how you guys are progressing, and what you're learning. If you have any questions, please comment below, even on the video, and ask any questions, and we can seek to answer any of your questions even in the next episode as well, the next class. So until next time, thanks for joining us. Bye now.